Hello everybody, how are you doing today? My name is Darren Pope, I'm a developer advocate for CloudBees, and we're here to talk today about what's new in Jenkins LTS 2.289.3, and along here with me, just like normal, we have Mark Waite. Mark, how are you doing today?
Great, Darren. How are you?
Good to see you. I tell you what, this release, I don't know, how quickly can we talk about this?
Pretty quickly.
Pretty quickly, but we're not going to get there yet because this may be the first time that some people have been with us. So one of the first things we always like to sort of remind people is how the Jenkins LTS process works. And this is normally where I say to Mark, take it away, Mark.
Super. So Jenkins long-term support releases are intended to be stable releases on which Jenkins users could choose to base themselves. And they're selected about once a month. Well, we select 4 base releases every 3 months, right? So, oh my land, I'm doing badly here, Darren, sorry. We select 4 times a year a base release for Jenkins. That base release then is used to establish what we call the long-term support release. The long-term support release then gathers a few selected changes. We backport fixes as needed to stabilize it, and it continues focused on stability for a period of 3 months. So first release is x.y.1. 1 month later, we do x.y.2. Next month later, x.y.3. And then we switch to a new LTS baseline.
And that's it. It's that simple.
It is that simple.
And sometimes the .1, .2, .3 turns into maybe a .4.
It does, and we've had awkward moments where, in particular, the most recent one, due to mistakes I made, we had a .5. Right. Now, so the moral of that story is don't always trust that the things you're doing will work flawlessly, because sometimes things just break.
It just breaks, and that's okay. But let's take a look at the change log for this month. Now, if you've been with us before, the change log has typically had a handful. And normally when we get down to this 3rd month, it's usually shorter. But honestly, I don't think I've seen one this short.
Right.
Ever.
You are correct. This is the shortest change log that I remember of an LTS release. It's clearly summertime in the Jenkins project.
There has to be, we need some kind of music behind that. I think that would have been just like, everybody's at the beach or in the mountains or they're somewhere else, except behind their keyboard.
Right. It's a beautiful time. It's a beautiful world. And yes, this is a very small release in terms of its changes.
Yeah. So it was really 1 point. And improving build status, progress, animation. Now you may say to yourself, okay, what does that mean? Since we have this opportunity, you may have seen a previous one before. I'm going to walk you through how to tell the difference between versions. And because the project is hosted on GitHub, this is actually really simple. And if you've never done this before, you might want to do it, not just for Jenkins, but for anything. So the release that came out yesterday, we'll go ahead and click on that. And then under the release, there's this compare dropdown. And we want to compare this against our previous version, which was 289.2. And you'll see a tag here for Jenkins -289.2. So let's select that. And now you're going to get a comparison between 2 and 3. Now, there's only one file changed, sort of. One material file changed. Because there were a number of files changed, but it was all the change from .2 to .3. So let's sort of jump through those. That's just boilerplate stuff, I'll call it, for the moment. And we get down to the very end, and this is the only change. We went from spin reverse to spin. That was the only change in this release.
It's kind of cool what that change means, because what that change means is instead of the icon rotating clockwise, it goes counterclockwise or vice versa. And users had noted, hey, the spin direction is unexpected. Now, I am not nearly cognizant enough to realize when spin direction is incorrect, but a user detected this and said, hey, look, it is disconcerting because all the other icons spin clockwise. This one goes anti-clockwise or something like that. And for me, that was a fascinating reminder of the importance people place on usability and on conventions in their use of an application.
I knew this one was coming, so I didn't actually open up the ticket. But that actually had been bugging me because I would be on a build log, and at the top of the page it would be spinning counterclockwise, but then the animated GIF or whatever it is in line was turning clockwise. I was going, okay, they're not near each other. I mean, if they would have been against each other to where it had been gears going right with each other, that would have been cool. But because they were that far apart, it just...
Right, and the disconcerting thing is fixed, and
Yeah.
that's an interesting example for me at least of, oh yeah, user interface really does matter, and we got to be aware.
Yep. And speaking of user interface, we're at the end of our LTS cycle for 289, which means next month starts the new LTS cycle based on 302. Correct?
That's correct. 2.302 has been chosen as the new baseline for Jenkins LTS, and it'll release. Current schedule is August 25th will be the release date for the 2.302.1 release.
Is that still 4 weeks? I didn't do the math.
That is. That's
Okay.
still a 4-week clock.
Okay. I didn't know if that... I know sometimes 4 weeks turns into 5.
Yeah, well, and especially, for instance, the December period is one time where sometimes we'll just declare, look, we're not shipping a release the week between Christmas and New Year's in the Western Hemisphere. We're not going to ship a release at a time when none of us want to actually be online.
Right. Gee, go figure. But with 302, a couple of things here. There are a number of fixes here. This was actually pretty cool too. That'll be in 301. Now supports FreeBSD. Finally. There's not many people that use FreeBSD. I'm one of them.
Me too, actually, Darren. So that's we're playing in rarefied air there, but I love my FreeBSD systems.
Yep. Now, I don't use it every day, but
yeah.
I still do have it. But, okay, I'm making a joke about FreeBSD. Not really. But here's the thing that does matter, coming in at 297. And this is removing Commons Digester. This is not to the level of the tables to divs or that big release that we had. That was 277, I think.
Correct.
Right. This is not to that level, but it could potentially have impacts for you if you end up being affected by certain things, which we'll look at in just a second. What else do you think about Digester? I mean,
well, so Digester is one of those examples of Jenkins is a long-lived project. It's a project that has cared deeply about its compatibility for users for 15 years. And so from its very beginnings to now, it's cared so much about compatibility that sometimes that means it's brought forward things that were dubious or unwise. And this Commons Digester 2 library is one of those cases. It's a library that was actually released like in 2013. So it's by now 8 years old. Long ago replaced, but it was kept inside Jenkins core specifically to retain compatibility for whatever things might have used it. Well, there are problems when you make those kind of choices, and this one is finally being removed. Go ahead, Darren.
right. Sorry, I actually clicked too early for you. So this is going to be a thing. I will make sure down in the description below this video, there's actually a link over to a CloudBees knowledge base article that is sort of getting people ready for this. And it goes into great detail. I believe there's going to be a comparable... Is there already a blog post for this? At least an early...
There isn't, but there will be an upgrade guide for 2.302. There will be an entry in the 2.302 changelog for it. So absolutely, this is an important part of the set of changes that are in 2.302.
Right. And the reason why I wanted to go ahead and pull this out, and again, I got to remember to add this to the description. This also applies, as noted here, to Jenkins LTS. There is a legitimate Groovy script, not pipeline, don't go there, but managed Jenkins script console, that level of Groovy script, that will tell you any plugins that are affected by this digester removal. Now, most of these are old. Most.
Well, you're being charitable. Okay, let's look at some of the items on this list. For instance,
Subversion still active.
correct.
but not that version.
Right.
But then I take a look at, let's pick one without being mean, VSS.
Yeah, Visual Source Safe. If it's not dead, it should be, right?
Yes.
So it's not a great choice. Further down, there's one that's actually quite popular, but still has two known problems and serious tables to divs issue. Yes, that's it, TFS.
I was guessing because that's based on you said popular. So I was looking through the rest of them. It's like, oh no, that's it. It has to be it.
Right.
So if you were to take this script and run it inside of your Manage Jenkins script console, this will tell you if there's anything that may affect you. And this is, again, I'll make sure the link to this knowledge base article is in the description afterwards. This may help you, just in case. And even if you run it and it's like, oh, it came back and there was nothing there, perfect. That's what you want. Basically, what you would want is list of issues and then a line. You would hope that all of this just basically goes to sleep.
Right.
So-
The goal here is to be empty before you upgrade to 2.302. Because if
Yes.
you upgrade to 2.302 with one of these plugins installed, one of these plugins with that version or prior installed, you, I believe, will get an error, right? It's
Yes.
going to report that linkage error, and that's not what you want.
Yep. So, again, the link to this knowledge base article will be down in the description. Let's not talk more about Digester. Let's talk about something more happy. How about down in 296? There's just one little item here, sort of buried here, that's probably shouldn't be buried.
Well, I like what was done here, because what happened in 2.296 is an administrative monitor was added that suggests to users who are currently running on a Java 8 virtual machine that they should consider running on Java 11. The logic there is that Java 8's been a great platform and a great workhorse for us. It's done really good things, but it's time for us to plan the transition to Java 11. And Jenkins has supported Java 11 for almost 2 years. So this is not that we're giving some brand new thing. It's a well-established pattern. Many of us run Java 11 all the time. In fact, ci.jenkins.io has run Java 11 for, I think, a year or more. So we've got Java 11 running in massive production at very large scale. So users should be planning their move to Java 11. And we're going to make it a little more of a move to Java 11 with 2.302.
Yep. And I was just scrolling through a few others. A lot of the other changes are not necessarily developer, but there's a lot of internals that are happening. This one's interesting, is removing some of the JEP 200 workarounds from a handful of plugins. So that may or may not to the level of Digester, but if you're running an older version of one of these plugins, you might have an issue.
Yeah, so I would guess if there's a general pattern that is likely unhealthy and we should warn people about. Upgrading your Jenkins core without upgrading your plugins, particularly since 2.277.1, you should consider it an anti-pattern. It's ill-advised to choose to upgrade Jenkins core without bringing your plugins to current releases, because there are changes in 2.277.1 and later that really need you to upgrade plugins. And if your plugins are deprecated or if they are being flagged with security warnings, you should, rather than upgrade them, at least upgrade to a version that fixes the problem, or if the problem isn't fixed, find a way to get off that plugin.
So let's play that out for just a second. Let's say I went through and I upgraded all my plugins first. So going off your recommendation that you just went through.
Mm-hmm.
I went through, I upgraded all of my plugins. But there is still one plugin that I am using that has not been updated for fill in the blank, whatever the case, whether it was tables to divs or one of the other ones.
Mm-hmm.
What am I supposed to do?
Well, so your choices are difficult at that point, right? One choice is, shall I stay with my current Jenkins version? because if you go to the new Jenkins version, you may, if the problem is a tables to divs problem, you may lose the ability to save your configuration forms. So first choice might be stay with the current Jenkins version, and then you've got to start trying to find ways either to get off that plugin or to persuade the maintainers to update it, or become a maintainer and update it yourself, because that plugin is going to act as a barrier to you until you get that issue resolved.
Homework.
Yeah, it really is. And it's a great way to help the Jenkins project. We would love to have people become maintainers. If there's a plugin that matters to you, that is the best kind of plugin to become a maintainer, because it matters. That's
Right.
how I got involved in the plugins I maintain, is they happen to be plugins that mattered to me.
And you only work on a couple of like plugins that don't really matter to most people, right?
I work on plugins that matter to me, and as it turns out, one of the plugins or two of them matter to a lot of people. Yes, that's a fair way to say it.
It's Git and Git client, just in
Right.
case you
All the other plugins that I care about hardly matter to anybody but me. But
Yes.
those two plugins, there are currently 280,000 installations of those two plugins.
just a few.
Right.
So I'm actually turning away, and it's not that I'm looking at you, Mark. I'm looking at my screen. You just happen to be in the direction of my screen. I'm trying to see if there were any other. Oh, this one was interesting. Stop bundling certain plugins. And the one that to me that was interesting was really LDAP. So what makes this decision happen? How is a decision made to, okay, we're no longer going to bundle that plugin in? Now, so bundle is not the same thing as install suggested plugins.
Correct.
Right? Those are
Good
different.
clarity.
But what makes this happen? Why is this? I mean, it gets into the reason why here, functionality or whatever.
Well, okay, so there's a piece of this that, for me at least, involves a history discussion.
Okay.
What's the concept behind these things, and how does the concept work? So the concept is that Jenkins, for some particular pieces of functionality, chose to include that functionality in Jenkins core at some point. And because it became part of Jenkins core, it became a part of effectively the published API of Jenkins core. And remembering that Jenkins cares deeply and profoundly about compatibility, once it became part of the published API, it had to stay there. But the development team realized it does not make sense to have LDAP support or subversion as part of Jenkins core. Those belong in plugins, because there are many users who may choose not to have subversion and may choose not to use LDAP. And we shouldn't be thrusting that capability on them with any of the liabilities that come with it. So the history lesson there is there were things that today are plugins that previously were part of Jenkins core, not a plugin. So when that functionality was removed from Jenkins core, in order to retain compatibility, the plugin was bundled inside Jenkins core, thus preserving the API and preserving compatibility. But there comes a point where we are actually able, after the aging of systems, aging of things, to remove the bundled plugin, so we reduce the total size of the Jenkins WAR file and can take that out of the API, because all of the things that depend on it have now developed a dependency instead on the plugin itself instead of Jenkins core.
Thank you, Dr. Waite.
Sorry, the history lesson, I find 15 years of software history personally fascinating, right? Because preserving compatibility across the time period that Jenkins has done it is impressive to me. And the techniques that have to be used, because remember that this code was originally developed, I think, with Java 1.2, maybe 1.3? And we're now on Java 11, confronting Java 17 LTS in September or October. So Java has evolved massively in the 15 years, and yet compatibility is retained. There are plugins that are 8 and 10 years old that load and run just fine.
Isn't that a little bit scary at the same time?
Oh, yes, of course, it's terrifying, right? Because think of all the things that could go wrong. Think of how heavily we're relying on the Java development teams to keep things bulletproof compatible. I mean, they have all sorts of challenges, and we're very grateful for the work that they do. They do an amazing job of retaining compatibility.
That is true. Okay, so quick recap. 2.289.3 is out. Before you upgrade to 289.3, upgrade your plugins first, and then you can do your however you update. Actually, before that, back up.
Yes, please. That's certainly a good thing. And for those of us who are deeply attached to configuration as code, run it on a trial system, right? There are all sorts of ways to make your upgrades much more smooth and much more happy.
Yes. We need to talk more about JCask at some point in the future.
I'd like that. That's fun. I've got stories to tell about the things that I have loved about configuration as code and what it has done for me. Yes, absolutely.
Okay, you just said things I've loved about it. Does that imply there are some things you don't love about it?
There have been things that I've discovered that surprised me and astonished me. So yes, I didn't love being surprised about certain things, right? There have been some places where, oh, that's painful, or some places where I have to admit, hey, I'm not yet managing this thing with configuration as code. There are still some places where I'm not managing everything as code yet, or I'm managing it as code but cheating. How about that?
You are so polite.
Yeah,
you are
well.
so polite. Okay. I will remember to put that link down in the description. It may be a little bit of time, but just be watching for it. Anything we need to talk about today, Mark?
No, I think
Again, this was a nice short
right. Happy
release.
summer.
Everybody's having a happy summer except for Mark and I, which are sitting here talking to you on a live stream on a Thursday afternoon, Eastern time at least. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and boot Mark out. Mark, we will see you again on probably August 26th, 27th, if everything stays according to plan.
Looking forward to it, Darren.
right.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, Mark. And for you that are watching either live or watching on the replay, thanks for hanging out with us today. If you haven't subscribed to CloudBees TV yet, go ahead and do that. Click on that subscribe button, ring the bell. You'll be notified anytime we do live streams like this in the future and any new content that we have on CloudBees TV. And I guess that's it for today. Again, my name's Darren Pope, and I'm a developer advocate for CloudBees. And we will talk to you again in about a month. Thanks again for watching today.